Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to our session. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of SAP process automation in the cloud. And what you're going to get a sense for is what's happening today in the marketplace, as well as we move more to a cloud-first stance in our IT organizations, what that's going to look like for SAP automation. I'm Andrew Hayden. I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager for our Automate products, and I will be your host today. I'm also joined by three of my outstanding colleagues, Charles Howard, Martin Munka, and our distinguished engineer in Sigrid Koch. So if you guys would like to introduce yourselves, that would be great. Charles, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. As Andrew said, my name is Charles Howard. I'm Senior Product Manager here at Precisely. Been working with the Automate product suite for coming up on 13 years now.
Great.
To you, Martin.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Monka. I'm also a Senior Product Manager for the Automate products and been with Windshuttle / Precisely for 7 years.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sigrid Koch. I'm based out of the San Francisco Bay Area. Been with Windshuttle / Precisely now for about 13 years, and I'm a principal sales engineer.
All right, thanks everybody. And we will be right back with Charles, Martin, and Sigrid in just a few minutes. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. Many of you in the SAP community probably are not familiar with Precisely, but there's a very good chance you're familiar with Windshuttle. In 2021, Windshuttle was acquired by Precisely, so we are now very proudly part of the world's leader in data integrity and delivering data integrity solutions to our customers. A little bit more about Precisely. So we are as I mentioned, we're the world's leader in data integrity. So we deliver the software, services, and data enrichment capability that allow you to get the accurate, consistent, and contextualized data you need to make really confident business decisions. Because after all, I mean, data is what is driving our businesses today. We've got about 12,000 customers worldwide in over 100 countries. We are in 99 of the Fortune 100, and we've got about 2,500 employees worldwide. Now, from a customer standpoint, we are in many of the biggest brands in the world. They trust us with their data, and hopefully you'll trust us with your data too. In addition to that, we have many of the leading technology providers as partners as well. So there's a good chance that somewhere in your IT environment, many of these partners exist, and we can work with them and have strong partnerships with them. If you have questions, please type them in the chat box, and we will try and get to them during this presentation, either during the presentation or at the end. If we do not get to your question, just be assured somebody from Precisely will get back to you with an answer to your question. So it will not go unanswered, and you will find out what you need to know. So let's get started. Now, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about digital transformation and cloud first. What's kind of driving this movement, and how has it changed over the past few years? Because there have been a number of changes that have happened just in terms of where we are from a corporate standpoint. How are we looking at digital transformation? And again, this move to cloud first, and what is the impact on our business? I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about complex processes in SAP, kind of what are those challenges that it provides you? And what do they look like? How do we define them? And what are some of the other things around processes and data in SAP that we can help you with? And I'll give you also a brief overview of what does our portfolio look like? What is the Precisely Automate platform, and how can it help you? And then I'll walk you through a case study very briefly of a customer that we're helping today. So this is an example of what you can do today pre-cloud. They're not using any cloud solutions, and they're not looking at it that way. It's very much an on-prem solution for them. But it give you an idea, it hopefully will give you an idea of what is possible with today's technology. And beyond that, then, Charles is going to talk to you a little bit more about kind of where we are from a Precisely standpoint with hosted offerings and SaaS offerings today. He's going to talk to you a little bit more about portals and what is the importance of portals when you start looking at cloud first from an automation standpoint. He's also going to talk to you about APIs that we have available to enable you to connect to other systems. Then Martin's going to talk to you about machine learning and artificial intelligence and where we see that fitting into an automation scenario for you. He'll show you a demonstration, talk a little bit more about what we've done and possibly what we see happening in the future. And finally, Sigrid is going to walk you through what we have available from a Fiori automation standpoint. As more and more SAP customers are moving to SAP S/4HANA, they're adopting Fiori, and we've had a lot of them come back to us and go, we really loved Studio functionality in ECC. What can you do for us from a Fiori standpoint? So we do have a new offering that is just available for a limited number of customers as a beta. And Sigrid's going to walk you through that. Finally, we're going to do a wrap up, and then hopefully we're going to be able to take some questions at the end from the team. Now, from a market update standpoint, obviously a lot of things have changed recently, and the pandemic has brought a number of things to the fore. It's interesting, though, that in 2019, when KPMG did their CEO Outlook survey, they found that about 2/3 of CEOs agreed with the statement that acting with agility is the new currency of business. If we are too slow, we will be bankrupt. And ironic that this was in 2019, because when the pandemic hit in 2020, this was very much put to the test. It basically became that question of how agile is our business? How fast can we pivot? How rapidly can we make the change to what has became literally overnight a new normal? We have distributed teams. We have, if we had manual processes, what do? We had people in the office that were passing things around, and it just doesn't work anymore under the current environment. So it brought to the fore this need for agility, this need to be able to adapt to a highly dynamic marketplace. And then when you add cloud first on top of this, you find that cloud really has become that strategic platform for growth and innovation. Many, many companies are looking at it as that's the next thing. That's the next sort of evolution of digital transformation, and how are we going to change our businesses? We're spending a lot of money and we're investing a lot in this. Gartner estimates that in 2022 alone, we're going to spend almost $500 billion on cloud first. So massive amounts of investment that we're making in this. And KPMG, during the pandemic, when they went back and talked to CEOs again, they found that about 80% of them now see themselves accelerating their digital transformation efforts. Now, we spent decades literally doing digital transformation, and I think what happened with the pandemic is it really exposed the limitations of where we'd gotten with digital transformation and this desperate need to accelerate it. And when we look at the cloud aspect of digital transformation, PricewaterhouseCoopers found that 73% of business leaders are actually heavily engaged in their cloud strategy. They're involved. They want to know what's happening because they want to understand how it's going to change their business. Again, cloud is becoming that engine for growth and innovation. If I'm a C-level executive, I really want to know, what is that effect going to be on the business writ large? And what is it going to be on my particular part of the business? However, when we look at the value that cloud is bringing to enterprises as we move to the cloud, a little over half have yet to see any substantial return. So it's one of those things that has a lot of promise, but it's finding those applications and activities where cloud really makes a difference. And I think we're going to show you today, as we walk through this, areas where Precisely in the Precisely Automate portfolio, both today and moving forward, can really help drive some benefits into that cloud, into your cloud first strategy as we go get there. Now, one of the things that we are very aware of, though, is regardless of whether you're talking about on-prem or in the cloud, you really have to be aware that process and data are inextricably linked. They are interdependent with one another. You can't do a process improvement initiative without looking at the data that process creates and manages. Because if you improve a process that is creating bad data or generating bad data, all you end up doing is just generating a lot more bad data fast. And that doesn't help your business at all. Same with the data quality initiative. If you're doing a data quality initiative where you're cleaning up your databases and the data that you already have, and yet the processes haven't been changed to address that data quality problem in the front end, you're not really improving anything. And this happens across all of your organization and really all of your data objects, whether you're talking about product data, whether you're talking about your customer and vendor, really essentially your master data categories. And within SAP, this is equally as important, because when we look at the master data in SAP, that materials, vendor, customer, and finance, those are absolutely critical. And being able to manage those processes more efficiently and more effectively and improve that initial data quality is important for your business in so many ways. But the reality of it is also when we start looking at where do you actually run your business, it tends to be below the waterline. It's in all of those various processes that use your master data. It's in your bills of materials and your routings and your account creation and your assets, task list, work centered, everything that happens from a transactional standpoint that uses master data, that's what you run your business on. So it's not just about the master data, it's about everything else. And that's one of those areas where the Precisely Automate portfolio absolutely excels at being able to deliver benefits throughout your organization. And another thing, when we look at the challenge around data and complexity, it really falls on these two axes. One is literally the volume of data that you're moving through a process, and the other one is the complexity of that process. If you have a low volume, low complexity process, you are never going to automate it. It doesn't make sense. I mean, you can automate it, sure, but you're never going to get your return on investment. If it's a simple process you do once a week or so, doesn't make any sense. Why would you spend the money to automate it? On the other end, if it's a highly complex, data-intensive process that uses, very high volumes of data, those are often big IT projects that they're going to farm out to a systems integrator. So they're going to go out and they're going to hire Deloitte because many of those processes are often very, very specific to a company, to an enterprise. And it's not something you're going to do in-house, let's just say. However, everything in the middle is where you can use an automation platform, or you can use our automation platform, as a matter of fact. And that's what we've done for 20 years. We have been able to look at those SAP processes, those highly complex, data-intensive processes that may not be the most data-intensive or the absolute, uniquely complex to your organization, and we can automate those. And I think the case study that I walk you through is going to be a really good example of what we mean when we show the benefits for a complex data-intensive process. But one of the first things we really have to do is we have to define, what do we mean by a complex data-intensive process? And many SAP processes fall into this. I think when you start looking at how do you manage your business and what happens with processes and data across your entire enterprise. So what does this look like? Well, I like to say, when I talk about these things, I like to start in the middle. So let's start with your finished good. In this case, it's a soft drink, but it could be anything. It could be an automobile in the middle there. And you've got an upstream and you've got a downstream. The upstream is everything that it takes to get to that finished good. It's your materials, it's your vendors, it's your production planning, it's manufacturing operations, it's all those other systems that are engaged. And then there's downstream. Now, downstream tends to be much different. It tends to be the things that are unique to your company, your industry, or your particular marketplace. So we're not going to talk about downstream today. We're going to talk about upstream because so many of those things are common and consistent no matter what you're making, no matter what your product is. Some of the common challenges that we see talking to our customers across multiple industries are, you've got lots of different raw materials, finished and semi-finished goods that you're putting into that final product that you have. You've got multiple vendors, multiple suppliers, complex data objects, complex processes, frequent changes, complex customer environments and vendor environments. You've got often very tight margins. And as we've seen with the supply chain crunch that we have lately, or often those margins get even tighter because things have become much more scarce or harder to get. You have seasonal exceptions, promotional packaging, all those kind of things that go through this. So those are common challenges no matter what it is you're actually making. And one of the common challenges that we see also from our customers is the way people are managing their data. I've stood in front of rooms of people and said, how many of you manage your data outside of SAP using Excel? Just Excel spreadsheets. And it's almost universally, that's one of the most important and critical ways that people actually manage their data. Don't feel bad if you do that. But just know that the challenge with that is it's often very difficult to govern. And in many cases, people are managing that data. And at the end of a process, they may go through a whole review and approval process with that Excel file. And then they turn it over to somebody to do data entry into SAP. So they're entering it either into the SAP GUI if they're in ECC, or they've got Fiori apps, or they're using GUI for HTML if they're in S/4HANA. And when you do that, what you're doing is introducing error at the end of the process. But it doesn't necessarily make sense. Now, anytime you've got manual data entry into the SAP GUI, it's just complicated and complex, and it needs a often specific knowledge of what are all those various fields that you're looking at. And with complex processes and Fiori apps, you're often talking about multiple Fiori apps, or you're stuck with the limitations of what those Fiori apps are. And you'll see some examples when Sigrid goes through the demo of what does Fiori app automation look like, and why are people looking for it. And it's many of the same issues that we see currently today with people who are using the SAP GUI and ECC. So don't feel bad if you're using Excel files currently. There is a way to work with that, and that's what we do with our Studio and Evolve products. And also, there are ways to help automate and simplify those GUI processes and those Fiori processes coming up. What else is complicated about those upstream processes? Well, think about what all of the different places that it has to go through and all the different places that it has to touch in your organization and where the master data lives. These are all mostly master data driven processes. So we're going to start with product development. So product development is going to come up with a great new idea. We've got this great new product. Here's what's in it. We've gotten to the point where it's ready to go. They go to procurement and they say, here's the components that we need, and go. So procurement goes out, they find who are the vendors that can supply all these things. Often it's a highly complex vendor environment. Complicating it even more is all of those vendors are often supplying multiple materials each. So now you've got the complexity of your vendor, you've got your materials, those things often overlap. You need that throughout the rest of the process. Manufacturing operations need to figure out, how do we actually manufacture this product? How do we put it together? How do we take those various materials and combine them in a way that creates the final product that product development had envisioned? Your warehouse and your logistics people are going, okay, when do we expect these materials? How big are they? What do they look like? Who are they coming from? Where are they coming from? Are we going to have to go through on the logistics side? Is there clearing that we have to do? Lots of different stuff that happens there. And then on the back end of it, and this I know is downstream, but it becomes that question of how big is the finished product? Where are we going to put it? Where does it have to go? All that kind of stuff. Production planning is then sitting there going, okay, we have to put this thing into the production plant. When are we going to manufacture it? Which relies on, when are all the materials going to be here? Who are the materials coming from? What are all the restrictions that we have to deal with? Controlling is looking at all of that going, are we going to make money on this product? How much are the materials going to cost? What is the cost to actually produce it? And what do we have to price it at to actually make money? And then finance is sitting there in the middle going, how much money is this going to cost us on the front end? So, what are those materials going to cost? What's it going to cost to manufacture it? And how much money are we going to have to pay? We're going to have to pay workers and things like that. And then on the downstream end, what do we have to charge for it? And how much money are we going to get in so that we're profitable? So think about what that process looks like. I'm sure in your company, it looks something like that, only a lot more complicated. But throughout that entire process, you've got core master data that needs to be managed and created and managed and changed and governed from vendor and material and customer and finance and all of that various information that has to make its way through those processes, along with any transactional data and any changes that have to happen. So highly complex processes that work their way through in order to get a product just to the point where it's been manufactured. And then you've got all of those upstream data and objects. So this is your bills and materials and your routings and your purchase info records and your source lists and your pricing and every little bit of that, which are all, the core parts of the data that you need, again, to manage and run your business. What do they look like? What do they sound like? How do they work? And how complex are those data objects? Now, when you try and combine the data part of it with that process part of it that we just talked about, often what happens is you end up with this giant Gordian knot of data stuff that you're not quite sure what to do with. And when you look at SAP is so complex that it is often very difficult to automate. And that's where we come in. That's where we believe very firmly that the precisely automate portfolio, and our platform can help you solve a lot of those complexity problems. And the beauty of it is you can start anywhere. You can start with your material master, or you can start with vendor creation and your vendor management. There is no sort of start here point. You can start anywhere in that process and work your way through. And many of these are processes that are human in the loop processes. So a lot of traditional automation tools don't work very well because human beings are fickle and we tend to do things in unexpected ways. RPA bots like things to happen exactly the same way every time. Certain other automation programs and processes like things to happen exactly the same way every time. And that's one of the beauties of our platform. And I'm going to walk you through just the basics of that platform, and then you're going to hear a little bit more about it as we go further into the presentation. So what does automation look like to us? What does it look like to Precisely? Well, we believe very firmly that what we deliver is the complete or a complete automation platform. And this includes data management or data automation and process automation. And in our world, data automation really sits at that Excel to SAP level, where you can use Excel to manage your SAP data. You can check your data against SAP before you do your posting. You can use the full capability of Excel to be able to make any changes you need to do. It's really great for mass data changes, things like pricing, materials updates, all of those kind of things if you need to do mass postings. M&A, so mergers and acquisitions, where you have lots of data coming from new systems that need to go into your SAP system. So data automation through our Studio product absolutely is the right way to go for those mass data processes. And then you've got process automation, and process automation really looks at the workflows that surround those when they need to go through like a complex review and approval process or an account creation process. And in our world, process automation comes in two flavors. You've got Excel workflow and you've got Foreman workflow. So Excel workflow is able to take those desktop automation or those data automation files from Studio and manage them through a complex workflow. And what it does is your workers continue to work in Excel, but that Excel file is then managed through the process. And at the end, when it receives final approval, it automatically posts to SAP. So there's no manual data entry at the end, and it's fully governed. So you know exactly what has happened everywhere, every step along the way with that Excel file and with that data. You know who's touched it, who's added to it, and who's made changes. Now, Foreman workflow gives you additional benefits, and it's really great for complex processes and coordinating all those complex processes for manufacturing like we talked about. And when I walk you through the case study, it's really an excellent example of how Foreman workflow can drive great benefits through an organization. It's good for things like account creations, where you've got multiple people in an organization that need to be involved in the account creation. So procurement may start the process for a vendor create, and then it needs to go to finance and master data and maybe your materials team and a couple of others. Well, each one of those teams can just put in the information that they need to. They get a form that comes to them that is role specific. So it's role based. They look at it and go, oh, this is just my information about this if I'm a finance person. It's a very, very efficient way to manage things. And it can work in either parallel or it can work sequentially. Once all that data is received, it gets recombined and a final approver reviews it and posts that data into SAP automatically. Again, you're able to validate that data throughout the process against SAP. You're able to govern, it's fully governed, you know what's happening, and it's got a lot of other data quality tools that can go along throughout it. So our portfolio has Studio, which is a desktop application. We have Studio Manager that provides a lot of user and policy management for those Studio users. And then we've got Evolve, which is that workflow process automation platform that we have. It includes Studio, but it also gives you a great number of capabilities. And what does all this do for you? Well, it gives you a complete set of capabilities. It gives you that choice. What is the right interface for my team at which part of a process? Is it going to be forms? Is it going to be Excel files? Is it going to be some combination of the two? It gives you those role-based forms I mentioned. It gives you dynamic process linking. If you think about these big complex processes, rarely are they a single process. They're often a process made up of sub-processes. Dynamic process linking allows you to link all those together. So if you've got a set of sub-processes that have to be finished before a next level process starts, Evolve helps manage that. So the dynamic process linking says, okay, all of these are finished, kick off the next process. But it also gives you visibility and governance all the way through. So if you've got multiple layers, that's fine. It's easy to see what's happening throughout them. So you get process dashboards and reporting, audit trails, so you know what's happening and you can quickly find out where things are. Or if you've got an audit that happens, just pull it up and you know exactly what steps were taken and by whom. We talked about that automatic data exchange with SAP, so you can take data out of SAP, you can review data, you can post data into SAP, you can pull data out, make changes, and repost it. Live SAP data validation, and again, you've got that granular user and policy management throughout. So this is what we see as being the complete set of capabilities that you need for an automation platform for those complex data-intensive SAP processes. You need that data management and data automation with the Excel to SAP, and you need the process automation that then can work it through a complex workflow. And when you have that level of flexibility, there's a lot of things you can do within your organization at all levels. And one of the other important things is you need to make sure that it works across all of your entire SAP landscape. Because if you think again about what we talked about, all the processes from product development through procurement and vendor and materials and everything else, you're not just talking about one place in SAP. It literally touches all of SAP. Your entire SAP environment is being touched by the data and the processes that happen in order to get something out the door, in order to create that product in the middle, if you will. And our platform does that. It works across your entire SAP landscape. It's not a point solution. It is a solution that no matter what you need to, where you need to work. So if you do just need something for, again, vendor create or vendor management, it can do that. But if you need something to link together on multiple parts of it, we can do that as well for you. So now I'm going to show you an example of what this looks like and how one of our customers is using our Evolve platform to get massive amounts of benefits for them. So this is an energy drinks company, and they, like a lot of companies, managed most of their business using Excel spreadsheets. And so what they generally did was they had one per product, had one large workbook, and that workbook had individual worksheets within it, and different individuals owned so there was usually a product manager who owned the workbook, and then you had different people within the organization who either owned worksheets or they owned columns within the worksheets, or even down to the cell level. So highly complicated to try and figure out if there was a bottleneck or a challenge, or there was a question about something. It could often take somebody half a day to track down the right person to figure out what's happening in cell C12 on this particular worksheet in this particular workbook. Highly inefficient, but it worked for them. It was a little bit of organized chaos, and they also talked about it as a little bit of spreadsheet hell, but it worked until they did a global distribution deal with one of the largest soft drinks companies in the world. And suddenly they discovered that this Excel-based system simply was not able to scale. It couldn't grow as quickly as they needed it to. It couldn't adjust to this new business dynamic that they were in. It was the bottleneck. It was the part of the SAP process that just stopped them, because they had no way to manage all of those things through in an efficient way, in an efficient manner. So we sat down with them and spent almost a month doing process workshops. Let's look at every aspect of your process. What lives on that worksheet? What does it look like? What are the technologies available, and who are the people that are involved? So this triumvirate of things is absolutely critical to understand. It's not just about the process. It's not just about the technology. It's not just about the people. It's the data that's managed through all of those things. And after working with them through that process, a couple of things came to the forefront. One of the biggest learnings was there's not just one product launch type. There are multiple product launch types. And I'm sure this is true in your business too. There's new products, So it's the brand new product that comes out of product development and they say, hey, this is something completely new and completely different. Or there's line extensions. I always say, like, think cherry Coke. You've got product changes. And with that global distribution deal, this was a big part of what happened to these guys, because suddenly you had ingredient and label changes, you had language differences, ingredients that are available or by legal and regulatory requirements in certain countries, they couldn't put certain ingredients in, or they were limited to how much they could put in. So there's a lot of just regional and local complexity. Seasonal and promotional products. This is an energy drinks company. They live for seasonal and promotional products, and then lots of others. And then finally, that whole issue of geographic expansion. So they had new plants and new plant extensions that they had to be able to do. They had a new sales organization, new customers, all of that complexity that happens on that end of the things. So they basically hit the jackpot for complexity and difficulty in scaling their organization. And after working with them for a while, they started with 3 basic areas of their company. One was point of sale materials. So merchandise. In the energy drink space, merchandise is a significant part of their business. And now they needed to be able to, again, get things distributed globally. They needed to be able to look at language. They had to look at all of the various requirements. And so that was a very important part of it for them. Raw materials, new supply chain. So now they've got to figure out what are those raw materials and manage them more effectively than they could do with that giant spreadsheet. And then the actual production process for the beverages themselves. Now, what does that look like? How does that feel? And how do we manage that more efficiently? And that is one of those areas where, as we talked about earlier, it's something that Evolve, pardon me, does very, very well. So what did we create for them? Well, we created a solution that starts from a single landing page. There's no more Excel spreadsheets. And from that single landing page, they choose what it is what the product is, or the product category is that they're looking to either create or manage. Is it point of sale materials? Is it a new point of sale materials, or are you having to extend it? And what are there multiple extensions? Because again, you've got multiple countries and languages and everything else that it needs to go to, plus merchandise, you've got colors and all kinds of great things. Raw materials, again, you've got a brand new supply chain. So you've got lots of different materials. You've got material extensions, which can be highly complex in that environment. And then it's the actual production process itself. How can we produce our beverages and new beverages more efficiently and more effectively? And this is the challenge that they presented us with. And after just a few months of working with them, what did we find? Well, they found that they reduced their go-to-market cycle times between 50 and 75%. So they literally cut their go-to-market time in half. Now, what would that mean for your business to be able to cut your go-to-market time in half? When we talk about at the very beginning of this presentation, the need for agility. Now you're able to get into the market faster with new beverages. You're able to respond to competitive threats more quickly. Again, massive amounts of savings for them in terms of time. They also gain visibility into that system. Remember, I talked about that. What we're able to give you is that ability to see everything that's happening top to bottom in your system and all those processes and sub-processes throughout. It was fully governed, which it hadn't really been with their spreadsheet system. And with that combination of visibility and governance, now they had a repeatable process. It fundamentally changed the way they went to market with their business. Because before, it simply was not repeatable at all. Every time they had a new beverage, they basically started with a blank workbook and then had to fill it in. Now everything works automatically. If you've got a new product, like I showed with that dashboard, it can pre-fill and predetermine what are the various things that need to go into it, depending on the type of product that it is. So this customer saw a massive amount of benefit from what we can do today. So that's not even looking at it from a cloud standpoint, although with Evolve, you can implement a hosted version of Evolve. That's the kind of benefit that automation and automating these complex data-intensive SAP processes can do for you today. And now I'm going to turn it over to Charles, and he's going to talk to you a little bit more about kind of where we are today with being able to help you move to the cloud and what's available now. So Charles?
All right. Let's talk about the Automate SaaS offering, which is something our customers have been requesting for quite some time, and we're very happy to offer now. I'm going to start with some of the benefits of a cloud-first IT strategy. There are many more examples than I have listed here, but I wanted to call out some of the examples I've heard from our customers. Starting with optimizing your IT infrastructure, lowering electricity expenses, reduced staffing, lower, more predictable capital costs, improved reliability without the need for redundancy, and even a reduced carbon footprint. So there are many more reasons why moving to the cloud could be a good idea for you, but these are some of the things that I wanted to kind of call out here. Now, what does our SaaS offer include compared to an on-prem deployment? And I just want to cover these at a high level, but we'll kind of walk through the list here. Starting with your deployment options. We offer hosting through AWS. We partner with them for this offering. You have the option to either deploy on-prem through AWS, through Azure, through Google, right? Any of the other places that you could have hosting from, but our offer specifically will be managed through AWS. Through us, the hosting and managed service agreement would be all-inclusive and just through Precisely. So you just have one group to work with for supporting your Automate deployment rather than having multiple different partners that you would have to engage with. As part of this offer, you get both a non-production and a production environment. You can add any additional environments you want as well, but you'll start with a dev and a prod, and you can add things in like a QA if you'd like as well. From an infrastructure support standpoint, the servers themselves are going to be managed by the Precisely DevOps team, so they will be responsible for the environments themselves. That includes operating system and database support, meaning things like patching would be covered by our DevOps team as well. Application support, this would still come out of our customer support team, so no change from how that happens currently in the on-prem world. So customer support team will be responsible for supporting the applications like Evolve and Studio. And then the DevOps team is responsible for the environment itself. Managed services, this is kind of a catch-all line for any type of support for the environment, but items like system monitoring, daily backups, environment testing, etc., are included as part of this offer as well. You also get upgrades to your Evolve or Studio Manager system, so you are entitled to these upgrades at no additional cost. So as new versions are released, you can migrate to them, get upgraded to them whenever you are ready. And that, again, won't cost you any additional money. You also get scalability to meet new demands. This is part of just flexibility of being in the cloud in general. But as an example, if you started off with a smaller group of users or a smaller group of solutions and found that as you continued to add more users or add solutions, that you needed the system to kind of keep pace with you. That's very easy to do in the cloud, and it's definitely something that we can do as a part of our offer as well. Next, we've got SSO configuration. So our teams will work with your SSO team to configure single sign-on for your system. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, security management. Our team provides proactive vulnerability management as well as 24/7 monitoring and protection from intrusion. So all of the security aspects that your IT team might have to take care of on-prem, our DevOps team would be taken care of as part of our SaaS offering. Now, taking a look at support coverage, I do want to call out that we provide a 99.9% uptime SLA. So you can be rest assured that the environment will be up. But in terms of the actual support you can expect, we kind of break it out into two different groups and two different timeframes. Environment support, which is from our DevOps team, is provided 24/7, and this includes any issue with the environment themselves. So servers have issues, the database has issues, the DevOps team is going to be on there 24/7 to take care of those. Application support, which again means support for like the Evolve and Studio applications themselves, is 24/5 and handled through our customer support group. You, of course, have access to our knowledge base to submit support tickets. There just won't be a live person on the weekends. So 24/5 for those support issues for the application itself. And so these are some of the high-level details about our Automate SaaS offering. Again, we're really excited that this is now something that customers can get access to and take advantage of. But let us know in the chat if you have any questions on this as we move on. And next, I want to talk about expanding automation, and in particular, automating processes beyond SAP. First, I want to talk to you about our new portal framework. What this allows you to do is open up your Evolve system to external participants outside of your organization. You can create custom portals for your customers, vendors, business partners, or even employees for self-service of their own data. This means you can streamline your master data processes. You also get a simplified portal for a simplified portal development experience. And you can also create internal portals to customize and brand the experience for your employees as a part of your Evolve environment. The design experience itself is going to be very similar to what you see in our form builder today. Currently, it's widget-based, and you can add new lists or tables or cards wherever you want them to be on the page. So they will appear where you want them to be, and you can kind of see that in the image here. This also means it's a visual experience, so you see exactly where the widget you added is going to show up as you build the portal. So as you start to add these things, you'll actually see them show up there on the side. It's no-code development, but if you wanted to get more technical and add in things like HTML sections, you can do that as well. But typically, portal designers are just going to utilize drag and drop to place widgets where they'd like, resize them as needed, to kind of build out that portal that they want. And then finally, I did want to call out that you can assign specific Evolve processes to specific portals. So you can have as many portals as you want, but just as an example, a customer portal could have a customer master data solution published to it, and those external users, those customers of yours, would have access to that solution, but wouldn't have access to any other solutions on your Evolve site. So you could have solutions for vendors that are part of a completely separate portal, and there's no cross-mixing of those solutions unless you want there to be. So you actually decide which solutions are a part of which portals. Now, here's a look at what this looks like practically. So your external portal user off to the left here, they would access the site that's been published and is hosted on Azure. So that is something I should call out here. The portal framework that we have is exclusively hosted on Azure, but that portal can communicate with your Evolve system, whether your system is on-prem or hosted through us or hosted somewhere in a private cloud of your own. And then from there, Evolve handles any communication that happens with SAP. Some example use cases for the portals include things like customer onboarding, change requests, profile management, etc. And similarly, the same use cases could apply to a vendor portal as well. This has been a really common request we've received over the past several years to kind of extend vendor customer onboarding scenarios to stakeholders outside of the organization. So I am thrilled that we now have this capability that our customers can take advantage of and really open up new opportunities to deliver not only a better user experience, but better services for their customers and vendors. It's also been really apparent in our conversations with Gartner that this is an area that's largely still unsolved for a lot of our customers. Companies are left trying to piece together their own solutions, and with Evolve portals, they can do all of that within a single platform. Next, we're going to talk about APIs. And with the 20.2 release of Automate Evolve last year, we introduced this set of RESTful APIs that enables Evolve to manage and automate broader end-to-end processes by connecting not just SAP, but multiple systems of record with that Evolve system. These APIs help solution developers efficiently integrate systems and processes to eliminate manual data management that often leads to poor data quality and ungoverned process tracking. For teams creating seamless end-to-end solutions, Evolve automates business processes that require complex SAP data interactions with other third-party systems like Salesforce, or systems that use the OData protocol, such as SAP. Traditionally, processes like these require inflexible custom solutions that do not easily adjust to the dynamic business environments that you guys are working in. Evolve gives you the agility and flexibility you need to compete and thrive in today's sort of ever-changing business landscape. So now getting into the actual APIs themselves, we have an SAP Data API, which is a REST API that enables direct integration with SAP for scenarios that don't require data enrichment. It acts as kind of a last mile into SAP for other applications and eliminates the need for RPA bots to screen scrape the UI and delivers faster and more stable process automation. Next is our Evolve Digital Access API. This API allows you to seamlessly kick off Evolve workflow processes from other systems of record for either human-assisted workflows or completely automated sequences before ultimately being posted to SAP. Finally, we now have support for third-party APIs as well. This enables Evolve solution developers to easily integrate with other systems of record beyond SAP that have RESTful APIs as options there. One example that we frequently hear from our customers is Salesforce, as an example. So you can now query data from these third-party systems like Salesforce into your Evolve process, or you can send data from your Evolve process into these third-party systems. This combination of APIs is available, again, only with Evolve 20.2, but we really feel this delivers a significant benefit to SAP teams looking to be part of a larger, more complex digital transformation and automation process. I wanted to kind of quickly touch on some example use cases for these APIs, and we'll start with the SAP Data API, which again enables that direct integration via the Windshuttle function module with SAP ERP systems for loading data into SAP. And what we've heard from our customers and what we're seeing is that this API is commonly used with things like RPA bots. So again, kind of being that last mile integration step into SAP rather than relying on a screen scraping type execution. But also partners of ours like Abby, who take data and can then send it into SAP using our API, or really any other third-party application that you need to get data easily in and out of your SAP system. ServiceNow is one that has come up quite a bit recently as well. And just to specifically make this point, this is an add-on to Studio Manager or Evolve. So the rest of the APIs, the Digital Access API and the third-party API support are only available in Evolve, but this API is available as part of our Studio Manager offering as well. The Digital Access API allows you to start Evolve processes or interact with them from other systems of record. And again, Salesforce and ServiceNow tend to be a pretty common one that we hear about here. But you know, this really allows Evolve to handle workflows without users having to manually start them from within Evolve. They can actually kick off that process as a part of their task that they're doing in Salesforce or in ServiceNow before that data is eventually moved into SAP. And then finally, again, support for the third-party RESTful APIs. You know, we really feel like this is going to be a big benefit to those Evolve solution developers so that they can start integrating with other systems of record that have RESTful APIs, which we can consume. Again, Salesforce tends to be a pretty common one that we hear from here, but also SAP's OData services. We're starting to hear more and more from our customers about them wanting to interact with SAP's OData services as well. So you can query data from these systems into an Evolve form, or send data from an Evolve form into those third-party systems, depending on your use case. And it can also be used in conjunction with the Digital Access API to kind of complete a process, right? And manage and govern data using Evolve through those workflows, but to support a broader digital transformation initiative. And with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Martin to discuss AI and machine learning. Thank you.
Thanks. Now let's take a look at how machine learning could potentially further increase the efficiency of these data-intensive business processes. I want to start by positioning AI and machine learning as one of many digitization trends that we see that are aimed to improve both your data and processes. The need to optimize and drive efficiency across the entire organization drives many digitization trends that affect your data and processes, and I listed some here. What we have seen from the previous use case example from Andrew is that there can be a lot of optimization potential in many business critical processes, but sometimes you need to apply multiple different solutions and redesign your processes to achieve the best results. Now, one of the trends that we have seen move from a hyped new technology into a productivity driver for business processes is AI and machine learning. On a high level, there are two ways to apply machine learning to business processes. It can either be embedded as part of an intelligent solution, or it can be developed standalone and integrated into a solution to augment a specific use case. The scenario that I want to talk about today is augmenting a business process in our Evolve solution by machine learning that is deployed outside of Evolve in the cloud and integrated into the Evolve process. And for those data-intensive processes that Andrew was talking about, machine learning is very interesting because the processes are about creating and maintaining critical SAP data itself. And machine learning is a technology that in its core builds on data and the quality of data. I think everywhere where you have a high potential for automation and a high amount of data involved in the process, the potential for machine learning can be high. The example that I want to show you today is the creation of material master data in SAP. For organizations typically in the manufacturing industry, food and beverage industries, the footwear and apparel industries that have a high amount of new product introductions and changes in any given year, that means a high volume of new material requests and changes to existing material master data in SAP. Now, these processes are highly manual and complex processes with lots of data entry error points. We see here an example web form to create new finished goods. It's not uncommon for organizations to have 200-300 fields or more on such a material request form. The data typically has to be collected and entered by different teams and can come from various sources. It therefore usually requires multiple collection steps, validation steps, review and approval steps in the process. Because of the volume and complexity of data, companies typically set out to define hundreds, if not thousands, of data validation rules that they implement. And that works great, and our solution provides the flexibility to support any amount and any complexity of rules with ease. However, the process to define and agree on business rules in the first place is often a lengthy and cumbersome process. Some of the main challenges in defining and establishing business rules are that they rely heavily on subject matter expertise and tacit knowledge, and often it requires the involvement of valuable resources. The second is that many rules affect data and process steps that are relevant for multiple functional areas and therefore require cross-functional alignment in the organization, and that can be very time-consuming. It can take companies months and sometimes more than a year to define and agree on all business rules. Then covering edge cases and hard-coded rules can be difficult, if not impossible. And so even with the best effort, hard-coded business rules will not guarantee 100% data quality. So what if you could eliminate the need for many of these rules by applying machine learning? That would reduce the effort, the time to solution, and complexity, and could therefore deliver huge savings and benefits to your organization. So we set out and have done an internal proof of concept to apply machine learning to a material master creation use case where machine learning provides data recommendations and data quality checks in the process. Machine learning replaced some of the rules that would normally be hard-coded in such a solution. The machine learning algorithm is hosted on the cloud outside of our Evolve workflow solution, and the data is exchanged via REST APIs in a synchronous way, meaning that predicted values from the machine learning algorithm are returned into the material master request web form more or less in real time. We built out a machine learning framework in our Evolve solution that applies the predicted values logically to specific form fields. The framework is extensible and we can incorporate any machine learning algorithm into our solution. In fact, we tried both a custom-built machine learning algorithm as well as a standard machine learning algorithm provided by SAP. SAP has introduced what they call AI services on their cloud platform, and one of those provides data attribute recommendations for product data that we leveraged in our solution. On a high level, the material master creation process looks like this when machine learning is applied to support the process. The user opens the new material creation request form and enters the minimum number of fields that are needed by the machine learning algorithm as input fields to predict a certain output. The algorithm is then called and predicts an output based on these input fields. And our framework in Evolve applies those output fields to pre-populate and validate form fields. Let's take a look at a simplified example. This is a simplified example of a material master creation form. As I have mentioned previously, these forms typically have hundreds of fields. In this example, the user enters the fields on the top section where it says data input, like material description, category group, division, etc. Some of them have been pre-populated. The user picks a division here in this case from a drop-down list. Those are the input fields for the machine learning algorithm and calls the machine learning algorithm now, which predicts the output fields in the bottom section. The color coding here indicates that if a value was predicted above a certain confidence level, in this case 90%, it's green. If the predicted value has a confidence level below 90%, it's yellow. Now, those predicted values like plan, storage location, sales organization, MRP type are just recommendations, predicted values with a confidence level. The user still can override those values. In this case, for instance, choose a different MRP type and override the value that was returned by the machine learning algorithm. In this example, the user chooses P1, which is a value that wasn't returned from the machine learning algorithm. So the color changes to red to indicate that this value is outside of any of those returned values from the machine learning algorithm. But it doesn't stop the user from applying those values because they still can be valid values. In the subtitle area, we also show the second best predicted value, not only the highest value that is used to pre-populate those fields, but also if there is a second best value with the lower confidence level, it is displayed in the subtitle section here in this example. Now, all of this is something that can be designed according to the needs, the individual needs in the process, but it shows an example how machine learning can deliver this data. There are two advantages to this, right? If in a real example, you have hundreds of fields in the form and the machine learning algorithm can pre-populate hundreds of those. It simplifies the entire data entry process for the user. The second is that these predicted values and validations are applied in such a way that it takes the existing data into account and predicts not only certain values in this correlation, but can also, the machine learning algorithm can also predict ranges, for instance, for numerical values like volumes and weights and prices, etc. Something that typically is very difficult to accomplish with hard-coded rules. Another advantage is that machine learning learns with new data. So in this example, the new value for MRP type P1, once it becomes a new record in SAP, it's saved in SAP, will be taken into consideration the next time the machine learning algorithm runs. So of course, one record will not change the prediction, but if there are hundreds or thousands of new records created with a specific value, the machine learning algorithm will pick those new values up and change the prediction automatically, something that if your business changes, your processes change, your data change, let's say you have a new plant where you would otherwise need to implement new rules, it can simplify the entire maintenance process of creating new rules, editing rules, and modifying new rules. I want to summarize some of the benefits that we saw and believe machine learning can deliver. First, machine learning can improve and simplify the data entry and decision-making process by providing these recommendations, especially if hundreds of fields can be pre-populated in a user-friendly way with highlighting the confidence level. Machine learning can improve the data quality because it mitigates the risks for guessing or other data entry errors. And machine learning can predict things like value ranges for numerical values, for example, for weights, volumes, prices, etc., or make predictions based on free text entries, which is often impossible to do with hard-coded rules. So it can do more than just replace some hard-coded business rules, but actually add new value to the process. Of course, it does reduce the need for hard-coded rules as well, which reduces the implementation time and complexity in the implementation and maintenance of a solution. But more importantly, it reduces the effort and time to define and establish those business rules in the first place. And as I mentioned before, this is often a very lengthy process. Therefore, apart from adding a new layer of data validation and providing additional value in the process, machine learning can reduce the overall time to solution in solution development. However, there are some limitations of machine learning that I want to point out. The first one to consider is that machine learning will not replace all business rules. You will still need to implement hard-coded rules, just hopefully a lot less. Then machine learning will not deliver 100% accuracy for all values. In some cases, the predictions might be 100%, but in many cases, the confidence level will be below 100%. So there is an element of confidence and judgment that comes with it. Machine learning is not a technology to replace the human in the loop like RPA. It augments the process and can increase the productivity and efficiency, but it does not replace the user. The third limitation is that you need enough data and good data. Machine learning makes predictions based on existing data, and so it requires a certain amount of input data, and the quality of your existing data has to be good. If your data is bad, you might need to cleanse it first before starting to build machine learning algorithms. In some cases, machine learning can help you to identify rules and bad data and can be used to identify the data that needs to be cleansed, but this has to be done first before the machine learning for the process is built. And there are many different machine learning models for different scenarios, so you might need to use multiple models in the process. And lastly, for new implementations, you might want to change the implementation approach and start with machine learning predictions to identify what can be predicted and where the gaps are before you build the hard-coded business rules to fill the gaps. And with this, I'll hand it over to Sigrid.
Thanks so much. Today, I'd like to talk to you about automating your SAP Fiori processes. Traditionally, we've done SAP automation. And what does that mean? We've provided solutions for both data management, typically from the desktop, as well as process automation, typically done through a web browser. Our portfolio of products includes Studio, where you can build the SAP automations. That includes creates, updates, as well as extracts. Studio Manager to store those automations, provide approvals, as well as server-side execution and scheduling. And then Evolve, which layers on workflow for both the web and desktop front ends. Now, under Automate Studio, where we've built out those SAP automations, these are business author modules. So transaction is typically used for uploads, query for extracting data, whether that's extracting for updates or for creating quick operational reports, and direct, which allows you to use SAP BAPIs or remote-enabled function modules for efficient advanced interactions. So today we're introducing the SAP Fiori automation. So let's take a step back. SAP interfaces have changed throughout the years. So the GUI, which is still used by a lot of power users, then the GUI was moved to the web. And then SAP introduced the NetWeaver Business Client. So Fiori is the next generation. It provides a launch pad of customizable groupings of these apps, both standard and customized apps. And the users can customize the theme as well as options in the apps and groups if that's allowed. There are different kinds of apps. A transactional app to perform, for example, postings of journal entries, sales orders, purchase orders, and the like, but it also includes master data, whether that might be business partner, product, or anything else that's master data. There's also fact sheets, which provide information on SAP objects. And then analytics, which gives you real-time information and performance on various processes throughout SAP. And for our SAP Fiori automation, we are targeting transactional apps. So we're announcing that Fiori app automation, and it will target SAP recommended UI5 Fiori apps. It integrates with SAP through APIs. And all versions of SAP are supported, and there's no backend changes or installations required to use it. So let's take a look at a demonstration. I'm here in Studio, and I'm going to choose the Fiori automation, record from a Fiori app, and we can provide the login information to get to the Fiori app. I have that stored, so I'll just click Login, and we'll click Start Recording. And this should look very much like a transaction recording for those of you who are familiar with it. I'm going to go to the Products group, open Manage Product Master Data, and search for a product. Open it up, and then once it's opened, we'll swap into edit mode. And now we'll go to plant data because I want to update MRP information. So we'll go to plants, and we'll go ahead and select a line. Don't need to search. And we're working with plant 1010, and I'm now going to swap down to the MRP data and update a few of the fields. Now again, this can work also for creations as well as transactional type postings. So this is a draft-based app, so I have to click Apply and then Save. And once that's saved, we can go ahead and close this window, and we finish the first step. Record, we'll do the mapping, and then we can run it. So now that that's opened, it's got a number of log fields as well as SAP fields. We'll go ahead and disable attachments, and we'll go ahead and start mapping our message columns as well as the product data. We'll have that start in column C, and then we can set different attributes like make it required, whether SAP requires it or not, so that will check prior to even attempting to post. And I'll go ahead and create some additional data so that we can test it out with multiple products in multiple plans. So there we go, we got a set of test data. And the first thing that you can do is validate this data. So we'll go ahead and choose validate. And what that's going to do is simply, once we save, is pass that information up to the Fiori app, but not save it or commit the changes. And if we get success, we're good to go. If we don't, then we'll get an error message, and it will tell us what the error is. Now again, this is creating the automation for the end users. They'll simply consume this once it's ready and tested. So there we go. We've got 4 successes. Now we can go ahead and attempt the run, which will actually commit those changes. So made the changes for the first record, and we'll go to the second one for the additional plant, and then we'll go to the additional material. And you'll see here, this is saved. And this is something a business user can create and test. So let's go take a look at the product and make sure that the changes were posted properly. It's always a good step when you're creating automations. And you'll notice that it also captured the plant. I didn't have to capture that or search for it. And you'll see there the MRP controller and the availability checks have been updated. So again, Fiori automation, that works much like our transaction automation, but it's automating the Fiori apps, and it's making API calls in the back end, something a business user can both create and use to manage their data. So if you want early access, we're looking for customers who would want to be involved, share their requirements, and provide us feedback. Beta starts soon in mid-September. And if you'd like early access, please reach out. We're super excited to introduce this to you. Thank you.
So really quickly, just to recap what we've talked about so far. We talked about what's happening in the marketplace. We talked about some of those challenges that around the complex data-intensive processes that we all deal with within SAP. I walked you through a case study that showed you what's possible today, right now, before you even move to the cloud. And even if you're moving to the cloud, that same kind of benefit and value that the energy drinks company got is available to you right now. Charles talked to you a little bit more about sort of what we offer today from a cloud standpoint, from a hosted standpoint, and then the opportunities that are available with portals, and also what APIs can do for you and what APIs we have available. Martin then came in and talked a little bit more about machine learning, where we are, and the proof of concept that we created with machine learning to really get a much better understanding of how does it work and what can it do for you from an automation standpoint. And finally, Sigrid talked to you about Fiori automation and the Fiori automation beta, which we currently have available for existing customers. Now, as she mentioned, if you want to become a Fiori automation beta customer, please let us know. There was information in the presentation, and we'll make sure to send out more information to those of you who attended. And finally, before we get to questions, I just want to leave you with this thought. And this is a quote from Justin Trudeau, who's the Prime Minister of Canada. And the quote is, "The pace of change has never been this fast, but it will never be this slow again." And those of us who live in the technology world kind of see this every day. And I think very firmly that this is one of those areas where automation can really help you manage and tackle the challenges that do come with that pace of change that's happening, that accelerating pace of change. We feel it all the time. And if you go back to what's happening in the world and the fact that people are looking to accelerate digital transformation, well, as you accelerate digital transformation, that pace of change gets even faster. Automation is one of those great ways that you and your organization can catch up with it and manage that pace of change more efficiently within your organization. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of what we can do. And now let's bring the team back in. Let's talk to them and find out sort of what the answers to some of these questions are. So the first one, it looks like, probably is from Martin. You are connecting to the machine learning algorithm through an API call. Does that mean there are options for which machine learning artificial intelligence provider I can choose? So can I choose different providers, essentially?
Yes, absolutely. And in our proof of concept, actually, we tried it out with our own machine learning solution, but also with SAP, as I mentioned. So basically 2 different providers in our internal POC. And yes, absolutely, you can connect to any other provider as well.
Okay. For Sigrid, if I have a custom Fiori app, will it work? Will the Fiori automation work with it?
Yeah, in general terms, it should work with either standard or customized Fiori app. Absolutely.
Okay. And Charles, can you clarify whether Studio is now browser-based, or are we still talking about a desktop application, since you talked about a hosted offering now from Precisely?
Great question. It is still a desktop application, so Studio will still be a desktop application for the near term. We are actually doing some R&D into taking that off of the desktop and putting that in a browser client. So it is on our roadmap to move that into the browser and kind of become fully cloud, but for right now, it is still a desktop app.
Okay. And another one for you. A lot of companies have multiple SAP environments, including a possible mix of hosted and on-prem systems. So how well does the hosted Evolve or Studio Manager work in those kind of hybrid environments?
It works just fine. We have several customers, actually, that I've worked with personally that have sort of this mix of environments, this mix of systems like you're describing. It really doesn't matter from an Evolve standpoint where the SAP server is, other than from a performance standpoint, right? Obviously, the ideal situation is that Evolve is as close to the SAP system as possible from a performance standpoint, but the connections are still going to work. regardless of distance and regardless of whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. As long as the Evolve server can talk to that SAP system, there's nothing additionally that you need to do from the Evolve side to enable on-prem calls versus hosted calls versus anything else. So it's all happening natively. It's just a matter of making sure the connection is happening.
Okay. So Martin, you showed Material Master for your machine learning example. Can machine learning be applied to other, or have you applied machine learning to other use cases within SAP?
So we haven't in our POC, but we built the framework in such a way that it can be applied to basically any use case. It's not limited to Material Master use cases. I think as long as there is enough data and complex data, right, those use cases could be suitable for machine learning. So not all use cases are good use cases for machine learning where it makes sense or the effort to invest makes sense, but technically you can apply it to any use case.
Okay, thank you. And Sigrid, some SAP S/4HANA processes do not have Fiori apps yet for them. For those, what can I use? Can I still use Studio, or is there something else that you would recommend?
Yeah, well, SAP continues to come out with more and more Fiori apps with every release. But if you don't have it, or if you instead want to still automate through the back end, which is very efficient, you can use Studio, which is what Charles talked about, and use all of the good options like transaction, direct, and query to create your automations.
Okay, and I think one final question, and this is kind of open to everybody. Are we looking into, or is Precisely looking into creating a mobile app for our automation products? And if so, what would that look like, or what would you envision that looking like?
I'll take a stab at that one. We have looked at using a mobile app previously, particularly for Evolve and pulling up workflows and forms and being able to approve them from a mobile app. We've not necessarily found a great use case for it yet. We've kind of been talking to a few customers over the years about things that they want to get done with it, and just haven't really found the right fit. So if you do have a use case where you think that would be particularly useful for your solution or your process, we'd actually love to hear about it.
Right, and Evolve provides an adaptive display. So for those processes, I mean, you could potentially view them on a smartphone. However, most people are going to want to use a PC or a tablet or a web form. You can also interact with those solutions through email when you're approving and be able to view attachments and copies of the form. So in lieu of a mobile app, that's still possible today, but I agree that sometimes mobile apps are a good use case.
So you can do Evolve approvals and reviews through your email client on your phone today,
Correct.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, cool. That looks like all the questions we have for right now. If you have more questions or put them into the chat and we haven't managed to get to them, I do apologize. Just do know that somebody from Precisely will get back to you with an answer, so you can look for that in your email coming soon. Before we leave you, let's definitely continue this conversation around what we can do for you for automation in the cloud. You can find more information at precisely.com. We have more examples of demos and webinars and white papers and case studies. So there's a lot of information there. Or you can get in touch with us directly. You can get in touch with us through the Get in Touch button on precisely.com, or you can call us and we'll set up a 30-minute discussion to figure out how we can specifically help you and your needs around SAP automation. Charles, Martin, Sigrid, any final thoughts or comments before we wrap up?
Just like to thank everyone for their time.
Yeah, and the Fiori automation beta is out now. Please sign up. We're excited to introduce it to you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. And thank you very much for attending. If you have questions, please contact us through precisely.com or through any of the emails that you receive as a result of attending this webinar. Thanks you very much and have a great day. Bye.